Chapter 17 is the pastor and his parishioner. So Dimmesdale is heading back to the colony after visiting the Native American who he has converted to Christianity. And Hester hears him. She backs up into the forest, and then she calls out to him. And she's nervous, of course, because she knows she's going to be telling him something that will upset him. Arthur Dimmesdale, she says faintly, and then she says it louder. And he is very startled, like a man taken by surprise in a mood to which he was reluctant to have witness, which, of course, he's been walking, feeling very separate from the rest of society, letting all of his sorrow and his weakness just hang about him. This is how he's walking. It's how he's described in the previous chapter. So he doesn't want to be seen like this. So he kind of stands up more strong and straight to sort of indicate that he's fine. And he sees Hester, but he can't be sure if it's a woman or a shadow. It may be that his pathway through life was haunted thus by a specter that had stolen out from among his thoughts. So I just want to point out, a lot of this chapter has a lot of sort of fantasy and dream references, where both Hester and Dimmesdale at various times are unsure if what they're existing in is like a dream or reality, or if even the moment they have together is a dream or a reality. And obviously, there are sort of, I think, practical ways, we could talk about that, saying that, well, they're living in secret. The two of them share a secret. Obviously, it would be dangerous for them to be near each other. So now finally they are, and it would almost seem unreal. But I think it's more important to recognize that this idea of dreams or fantasy or being uncertain whether you're alive or dead, all of these are motifs that come up again and again throughout this book. And it is, just keep in mind what a motif is. I'm sure your teachers have taught you this. A motif is a recurring element that helps to reinforce the theme. And so when you think about dream versus reality, it's showing us that maybe who they are authentically cannot really happen in real life. That's one way to interpret it, that their authentic selves are only in their imagination or are only when they are away from society. I do think it's just really important to notice this and see how this sort of dream state develops throughout the rest of the novel, because it is something that you might decide to do a close reading on or to write about, like even in a paper. Like, how is it that Hawthorne is, telling us what he wants to tell us? So we will come back to that for sure, but I just want to point out there's a lot of that going on here. In fact, right away, he does recognize finally, because Hester steps out of the shadow, that it is her. And he says, "Art thou in life? Like, is it really you?" "Even so," she answered, "in such life as has been mine these 7 years. And thou, Arthur Dimmesdale, dost thou yet live? Like, is it really you?" It was no wonder that they thus questioned one another's actual and bodily existence, and even doubted of their own. So strangely did they meet in the dim wood that it was like the first encounter in the world beyond the grave of two spirits who had been intimately connected in their former life, which is exactly what they are. They were intimately connected, and now in this present life, they cannot acknowledge it. They have to keep it a secret. So we find out that, and we know this too, that Dimmesdale is very afraid. It says here, "The soul beheld its features in the mirror of the passing moment. It was with fear and tremulously, and as it were, by a slow, reluctant necessity, that Arthur Dimmesdale put forth his hand, chill as death, and touched the chill hand of Hester Prynne." So they're awe-stricken at each other. They're thinking about all the things that have happened between them and what the last several years have been like. And then he reaches out and takes her hand. They now felt themselves, at least, inhabitants of the same sphere. So they are each real to each other. So they sit down together and they start to talk. And initially they talk about sort of ordinary things. It says, thus they went onward, not boldly, but step by step into the themes that were brooding deepest in their hearts. So long estranged by fate and circumstance, they needed something slight and casual to run before and throw open the doors of intercourse so that their real thoughts might be led across the threshold. So they start with small talk so that they can sort of warm up to the real things that they need to talk about. And finally, Dimmesdale asks Hester if she has found peace, and she smiles and looks at her bosom and says yes. She nods yes. And then she asks if he has, and of course we know he has not. He tells her he's nothing but despair. What else could I look for, being what I am and leading such a life as mine? Were I an atheist, a man devoid of conscience, a wretch with the coarse and brutal instincts, I might have found peace long ere now. Like if I were a terrible person, I would find peace, but I am still so burdened by sin. Hester, I am most miserable. And Hester tries to turn this around a little bit. She's like, well, the people reverence thee. They love you. Does this bring thee no comfort? Like she's asking him, doesn't the good work he's doing in their colony somewhat help him atone for his sin and feel like he matters? And he says, no, it makes it worse. He has even more misery. As concerns the good which I may appear to do, I have no faith in it. He doesn't believe he's good. He believes he's a hypocrite. He has said this before. We see this all throughout this discussion. He tells her, I have laughed sometimes in bitterness and agony of heart at the contrast between what I seem and what I am, and Satan laughs at it. And Hester gently tells him that he has wronged himself. She says, you have deeply and sorely repented. Your sin is left behind you in the days long past. She says, you already suffered. You are so genuinely sorry. Of course you are forgiven, is what she's telling him. Is there no reality in the penitence thus sealed and witnessed by good works? Just like she's wearing the scarlet letter, he's doing good things, and she feels like his doing good things is penitence, that he is atoning for his sin through his good works. Should that not bring you peace? And he says, no. There is no substance in it, because he thinks he's a hypocrite. It is cold and dead and can do nothing for me. Of penance I have had enough. Of penitence there has been none. So he's certainly been punishing himself. We know this. Hurting himself, not sleeping, not eating. But he hasn't, in his mind, done enough good to cancel out his sin. He says, Hester, you wear the scarlet letter openly, but mine burns in secret. And we do know he's been cutting his chest. Thou little knowest what a relief it is, after the torment of 7 years' cheat, to look into an eye that recognizes me for what I am. He's like, he feels safe with her. You know, he feels good to be honest and open with someone. Had I one friend, or were it my worst enemy, to whom, when sickened with the praises of all other men, I could daily betake myself and be known as the vilest of sinners, methinks my soul might keep itself alive, like if only I could tell somebody. Which makes me think as a reader, like, wouldn't it be nice if they could see each other a little bit secretly? It would help, help him be honest and maybe feel that he has a friend. She looks in his face and hesitates to speak. And she's nervous to tell him what she's going to tell him, of course, because the news about Roger Chillingworth being her husband is going to really upset him. And she finally gets up her nerve and she says, such a friend as thou hast even now wished for, with whom to weep over thy sin, thou hast in me. Of course, she is his friend. More than that. Again, she hesitated. Thou hast long had such an enemy, and dwellest with him under the same roof. So she's going to tell him about Roger Chillingworth. And he jumps up and gasps for breath and clutches his heart. What? He says, an enemy under my own roof? What do you mean? And so she's really nervous to actually tell him the truth. She thinks about, her own situation again. She doubted not that the continual presence of Roger Chillingworth had been, working sort of negatively. I mean, she kind of just reminds herself that Roger Chillingworth's presence is definitely hurting Dimmesdale, possibly even making Dimmesdale crazy, because he's there acting as if he's trying to be a friend and help when actually he's secretly seeking revenge. So this is all her just reminding herself of all these things about Chillingworth. Such was the ruin to which she had brought the man once, nay, why should she not speak it? Still so passionately loved, Hester felt that the sacrifice of the clergyman's good name and death itself, as she had already told Roger Chillingworth, would have been infinitely preferable to the alternative which she had taken upon herself to choose. And now, rather than have had this grievous wrong to confess, she would gladly have laid down on the forest leaves and died there at Arthur Dimmesdale's feet. So she really wishes she could just die than have to tell him the truth about Roger Chillingworth. And she says, "Oh, Arthur, forgive me." So she uses his first name. This is very intimate. "I have striven to be true, but I consented to a deception. But a lie is never good, even though death threaten on the other side. Dost thou not see that I would say, that old man," and she tells him, "the physician, he whom they call Roger Chillingworth, he was my husband." So Dimmesdale is very upset. Never was there a blacker or a fiercer frown than Hester now encountered. For the brief space that it lasted, it was a dark transfiguration, but his character had been so much enfeebled by suffering that even its lower energies were incapable of more than a temporary struggle. He sank to the ground and buried his face in his hands. "I might have known it. I did know it. Was not the secret told me in the natural recoil of my heart? Like, my instincts were telling me he was evil. Woman, thou art accountable for this. I cannot forgive thee." Oh, so he is so angry at this deception that how many years? 7 years? She's kept this a secret. And Hester flings herself on the fallen leaves beside him. Again, look at the role of nature. They are on the ground in the leaves. This is a safe place for them. This is where they can be their authentic selves. "Thou shalt forgive me. Let God punish. Thou shalt forgive." With sudden and desperate tenderness, she threw her arms around him and pressed his head against her bosom, little caring, though his cheek rested on the scarlet letter. He would have released himself, but strove in vain to do so. Hester would not set him free. She's stronger than him. Lest he should look her sternly in the face. All the world had frowned on her. For 7 years had it frowned upon this lonely woman, and still she bore it all, nor ever once turned away her firm, sad eyes. Heaven likewise had frowned upon her, and she had not died. But the frown of this pale, weak, sinful, and sorrow-stricken man was what Hester could not bear and live. So all the punishment she's experienced so far is nothing compared to the idea that Dimmesdale might not forgive her. "Wilt thou yet forgive me? Wilt thou yet not frown? Wilt thou forgive?" She asks again and again. And he does say, "I do forgive thee. I freely forgive you now. May God forgive us both. We are not, Hester, the worst sinners in the world." True that. Absolutely. Think about all the other people in the Puritan community. There are sinners everywhere. There is one worse than even the polluted priest. That old man's revenge has been blacker than my sin. Absolutely, Roger Chillingworth is a worse sinner. He has violated in cold blood the sanctity of a human heart. Thou and I, Hester, never did so. No. They basically embraced each other's human heart. They found love in a place where love was forbidden. This is such a love story. "Never," whispered she. "What we did had a consecration of its own. We felt it so. We said so to each other. Hast thou forgotten it? They said they loved each other." Hush, Hester. No, I have not forgotten. So then they sit again in the woods, and I just want you to notice here how nature mirrors their feelings. At some point, there's a big gust of wind, creaked with the whole forest creaked with a blast that was passing through it. The boughs were tossing heavily above their heads, while one solemn old tree groaned dolefully to another, as if telling the sad story of the pair that sat beneath, or constrained to forebode evil to come. So they're protected by the forest. The forest empathizes with them, is mirroring them. All these things I think are important. And yet they lingered, because they say they're safe in the woods together. How dreary looked the forest track that led back to the settlement. They don't want to go back to their settlement. No golden light had ever been so precious as the gloom of this dark forest. Here, seen only by his eyes, the scarlet letter need not burn into the bosom of the fallen woman. Here seen only by her eyes, Arthur Dimmesdale, false to God and man, might be for one moment true. So this is a very direct comparison that in nature, you are your true self, and in that society, you are not. Hester, he suddenly cries, here is a new horror. This is a legitimate concern. Roger Chillingworth knows your purpose to reveal his true character. Will he continue then to keep our secret? What will now be the course of his revenge? Is he going to out them? Is he going to tell the town what they've been doing? And Hester doesn't think so. She says, there is a strange secrecy in his nature, and it has grown upon him by the hidden practice of his revenge. I deem it not likely that he will betray the secret. He will doubtless seek other means of satiating his dark passion. And then Dimmesdale says, how am I to live longer breathing the same air with this deadly enemy? Think for me, Hester, thou art strong, resolve for me. What am I supposed to do? I live in my home. This guy lives with me. If I kick him out, he might tell people. So Hester says, you cannot dwell any longer with Chillingworth. Thy heart must no longer be under his evil eye. And he's like, well, how am I supposed to avoid it? He has a public home where people come and see him, and he is a minister in town. How does he just not live there? He says, shall I lie down again on these withered leaves? Must I sink down there and die at once? Do I just need to sort of disappear into the ground? Alas, what a ruin has befallen thee, says Hester, tears gushing into her eyes. Wilt thou die for every weakness? There is no other cause. The judgment of God is on me, answered the conscience-stricken priest. It is too mighty for me to struggle with. He's like, he's just going to give up. This is his whole MO at this point. He says to her, be strong for me, advise me what to do. And so this is Hester's idea. This could definitely be a quiz question. She says, is the world so narrow? Does the universe lie within the compass of yonder town, which only a little time ago was but a leaf-strewn desert, as lonely as this around us? There's other places to live. Whither leads yonder forest track? Look at that pathway. Where does it go? It goes out into the wilderness, where the Native Americans live. She says, thou art free. So brief a journey would bring thee from a world where thou hast been most wretched to one where they mayest still be happy. Is there not shade enough in all this boundless forest to hide thy heart from the gaze of Roger Chillingworth? And then he says, only under the fallen leaves. And then Hester says, what about the sea? If thou so choose, it will bear thee back again. Go back to England. In our native land, whether in some remote rural village or in vast London or even Germany or France or Italy, thou wouldst be beyond his power and knowledge. Just go start anew. And what hast thou to do with all these iron men and their opinions? They have kept thy better part in bondage too long already. This Puritan community is not a good place for you, is what she's saying. And he says, I am powerless to go. Wretched and sinful as I am, I have no thought other than to drag on my earthly existence in the sphere where Providence has placed me. Lost as my soul is, I would still do what I may for other human souls. So like, I can still be of good use here. He's kind of like flip-flopping back and forth, very stubborn in terms of like accepting the fact that the good he does for human souls is atonement. He will not accept that as a fact. If I were Hester, I'd be so frustrated with him. Like, he's just determined to be a victim of his own sin, and he doesn't need to be. And I think I agree with Hester that there are ways to atone for sin by doing good things. Thou art crushed under the 7 years' weight of misery, says Hester. I mean, Hester is correct. 7 years is a long time to be miserable and suffering. She says, begin anew. The future is yet full of trial and success. There is happiness to be enjoyed. There is good to be done. Exchange this false life for a true one. Be, if thy spirit summon thee to such a mission, the teacher and apostle of the red men. Go be a leader, a religious leader for the Native Americans who might want to convert, or just guide them, be part of their community, or as it is more thy nature, be a scholar. I mean, he's very studious, which is what her husband was, and a sage among the wisest and the most renowned of the cultivated world. Preach, write, act, do anything except for give up. And then she says, you can even change your name. I mean, she's correct. All these things could happen, but he has to have so much strength to do something like that. And Arthur says, oh, Hester, thou tellest of running a race to a man whose knees are tottering beneath him. I must die here. So stubborn. So unable to rise up. There is not the strength or courage left me to venture into the wide, strange, difficult world alone. I'm thinking, well, couldn't she go with him? It was the last expression of the despondency of a broken spirit. He lacked energy to grasp the better fortune that seemed within his reach. He repeated the word, alone, Hester. And she says in a deep whisper, thou shalt not go alone. So she's telling him she would go with him, like literally if he wanted to leave, and she would go with him into death if that is his fate.